Hi, so this is an update on the original video that I posted regarding the Great Suffering leading to the Great Awakening in relation to Choice Point and Choice Point and it being a Choice Point year. So the Choice Point year was September 2021 through to September 2022. So we have now passed that Choice Point year. And so, with my own updated understanding of choice points and the power of choice, I wanted just to add this extra update to the what we really do with this choice point now that we've made it. So, I've recently had a much deeper understanding of the power of choice, and I run through this in quite a lot of detail in the monthly Invincibility Principle membership. So, in the Invincibility membership in January, this is what we will be discussing in greater detail and going into and exploring. But for the purposes of this video, for those who are not members, who aren't Invincibility members, I'm going to do a very short top headline of the new understanding and how it relates to the choice points. So, if you're not a member, please do consider joining. The Pioneer membership price and benefits are only available until the end of December 2022. After that, a new pricing point comes into place. So please do take advantage of that. If you want to go deeper into this, please consider joining. But so I'll start with the fact that I actually got this information a little while ago, around the same time as I understood about the choice points, but I actually dismissed the information because it actually sounded like it was egoic information. And I'm very, very careful to not pass on anything that I feel might have been tainted by my mind or my ego. And so I'm very fastidious about that. And it didn't seem like it was true. So I dismissed it and I didn't share it. But I did get the information through originally that the choice point of that we were given, in effect, although it came in very many different varieties, was the choice to stay in suffering or the choice to move into awakening. And it seemed like once the choices were made, there would be a split energetically between those who had chosen one or the other. And the reason I dismissed it was because it didn't seem very unity conscious to me. It seemed weird that there would be a split or a separation energetically when the universe is evolving into unity consciousness and evolving into um, collective an era of collective ideas and collective good. So it didn't seem quite right to me, so I had rejected it, but it did come through at the same time. Now, with my deeper understanding of how choice works in the universe, and I already had a fairly good understanding, but this recent sort of clarity has really sort of made me recognize this in a much more easily describable way. Um, Now I can kind of see how that works. So this is what I'm going to share with you. So um, to do a top headline of the understanding is that there is a great deal of power in our choices, and as individuals, we make choices, and that those choices are set against a backdrop of collective choices. So, what we consider reality is an ever changing um, picture of choices of all those, everything that has consciousness in the universe. We kind of see that as being static because of our linear minds, but in reality, it is a constantly changing, constantly adjusting to each conscious individual consciousness's choices. So, with that understanding, I was asking the universe to then explain if we have constantly changing effectively realities because it accounts for all the individual choices, why would we have been given a choice point? It doesn't make any sense. And so the answer to that is, and it's quite interesting, is that when we make a choice that looks a bit different to our current reality, we want something different to what we've got. We're stepping out of the societal norms, or we just want something different for ourselves and a new possibility for ourselves. We make those individual choices, and we make them because we're no longer resonant with our current reality, and we want to have a different reality, and we become resonant with whatever it is that we are choosing for ourselves. This is the basis of manifestation, right? You're choosing with intent something else than what you currently have in this moment. And so when an individual does it, it makes all these individual changes to the massive collective of 7 billion humans and even more wildlife and animals and plants and all that have a level of consciousness. So everything feeds into the same collective. But recently, there has been a collective request to change situations for them. So when it's an individual, we make it individually against the backdrop of a collective choice. And that collective choice is kind of it kind of amalgamates into one picture. But there has been a shift to many people globally, many consciousness globally, saying we are not resonant with the reality that we have got and we want to shift. On an individual level, that would just happen very simply on an individual level. But actually, there's a huge collective shift that's happening. And because of that collective shift, the collective backdrop would have to change. And therefore, because the collective backdrop has to change, we were given the choice. That's why we were given the choice point. If one individual does it, it's a very simple individual against a backdrop of a collective choice. It just changes their choices. But when there's lots of us at the same time, it actually creates a shift in the backdrop as well, because it's a collective shift. That's why we were given a choice. So after the choice points have been made, and they've been all made now, the year has passed, we're now in the transition of those energies and those choices being made. So we've got to, I perceive it as about 2 years of transition. It may be longer, but that's how it feels. That's what it feels like at the moment. It's quite hard to pin down time frames in the world of spirit because there is no time in the world of spirit, so it's quite hard to pin it down. But that's the feeling I get. It's about 2 years. So what happens after those 2 years? So I've mentioned this in previous videos. Currently, those who have chosen suffering effectively have chosen the same backdrop, no fundamental changes. We're on the path of the same possibilities and realities with little individual changes via individual people, as it has always been. So that's why it's suffering, because as we all know, we are on a path of destruction. There is suffering involved in that, and responsibility as well in that destruction. Therefore, that's the path that you've chosen. Consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously or consciously, you were given a choice, and that is the choice that was made. So that is the reality that you're carrying on with. For those who didn't choose suffering, for those who chose to awaken, and awaken is just the word I use to say you see that this is not the world for you, this is not the resonance for you, and that there is another way, and that's what you're resonating with. If you chose that, that's wonderful, right? We're moving away from the suffering that is the current reality, the collective reality, and we're moving towards a more resonant, more beautiful dimension of choice. And so there's always infinite dimensions which hold infinite possibilities. And normally we just do this individually. We just find a choice that is more resonant to us, we become that, and we move into effectively a different version of reality. But as we are doing it collectively, there is a bigger dream at stake. So I've been getting the message quite clearly, and I feel other people have been getting this message as well. Well, it's not just me. Those of us who are tuned into this kind of recognize that there's a need for a new dream. We know what we don't want. We don't want the suffering. We don't want the climate catastrophe. We know all of that, right? We know what we don't want. But now we have to dream the new dimension of reality that we do want into being, because that's how manifestation works. What is it that you become resonant with? What is it that you are aligned with? What is the greatest, most truest expression of yourself? That is what we are creating. But we're doing it as a collective. So we have to start dreaming a new dream. We know what we don't want. And you have to remember that the universe has infinite potential and infinite realities. Therefore, we don't have to limit ourselves to what we think is possible. And even if we don't know how it's possible, this is very much a spiritual technique. We don't care how we do it. We only know what we want to do and allow the universe to help us to make it happen. So we don't need to know the how. We shouldn't restrict ourselves by the how, but we need to dream what this more beautiful version, the most resonant version, looks like. What does equality really look like? What does fairness really look like? What does a lack of greed and commoditizing of everything in our lives about? How do we make life simpler? How do we make it more sustainable for everybody? How does everything get to thrive? Not just humans, but all of life get a chance to thrive. How, if we were going to create a new, what would that look like? So our job for those of us who have awakened is to just and I'm not going to say ignore it, because it's quite hard to ignore suffering, but don't get dragged into the suffering. We need to put our energies into what the new dimension of reality, what do we want that to look like for us? And I think this is what was missing from, and it still is missing from, the climate activists' idea. It's all very well to bring attention. It's all very well to say what we don't want. But what is it that we do want? What's the dream? What do we want our lives to look like? What does sustainability look like? What does fairness look like? What does equality look like? We need to envision this, and then we need to be it in ourselves. That's how we create change, and embody it in a way that we start moving towards that in our actions as well. So there is work to be done. The choice point is not the only thing about our personal lives. In when I was describing the choice points originally, it was very much about individually choosing, because we had to individually choose, but it is a collective move. So we are moving collectively into a new dimension of reality. And so we have to come to some vague consensus. It doesn't have to be exact. The universe will collate all of our dreams together, and it will produce a version of that for us. That's how it works. So I wanted to give this update because the choice points seemed very, very personal, and they were very personal because everyone had a choice point and it looked very different to each person. But now we are moving into the collective era. I've said this in other videos as well. We are moving into an era of collectivity. It's not just about the I, it's not just about the individual. If anything, it's the exact opposite of that. We're moving into we consciousness. And so, how do we want this to look? What's it going to look like? How's it going to make us feel? What does the things that we care about, how is that expressed in this version of the world? So that's the task. I hope you find this update useful. If you are in the Invincibility membership, don't worry, I'm going to go through the power of choice and how to choose in January. I think that's a really good time of the year, for obvious reasons, to talk about the power of choice and how it works. So you will have that full description there. And we're going to have a great time dreaming the new dream together.